Zurgo, Thunder's Decree, red, white, black for a 2/4 legendary creature orc warrior with Mobilize 2, and during your end step, warrior tokens you control have this token cannot be sacrificed. And of course, Mobilize 2 means when this creature attacks, make 2 1/1 red warrior creature tokens tapped and attacking that you sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step, but Zurgo tells you to not sacrifice them. So that's pretty sweet. So looking at what we want to do with Zurgo. All right, so first we're going to see who wants this deck. So in terms of the actual like similar commanders to Zurgo, we have the Master Multiplied, who's all about, hey, you no longer have to sacrifice due to X, Y, and Z abilities in Rakdos, right? So usually it's a legendary ability, but with the Master Multiplied, we ignore that. Very similar to Zurgo. NAJEELA, the Blade Blossom, Warrior Typal cards, whatever NAJEELA wants that fits in the Mardu frame, we probably want here. And then lastly, Anim Pakal. This is all about like Boros army building through attacking. That's basically what Zurgo's doing. Now it's just like a little of the black tint to it where we can sacrifice the creatures if we want through other such means, if say Zurgo's not in the battlefield, but we're going to get some sort of trigger out of it. And then on to who wants this commander. Wait for it, the Mongols, reference to Hank Green. Spartan parents or Total War Attila enjoyers. Basically, if you can survive combat, you are worthy enough to stick around forever. Simic players who have turned to the dark side. Very, very true. People who have not learned that, well, people themselves are a renewable resource. So if you're still locked into, ooh, I don't want my creatures to die, well, this Zurgo is perfect for you because he's going to keep those tokens alive until they need to die through combat. And then lastly, Brimaz players who actually want to win the game, because Brimaz players don't win. Zurgo allows you to win because these tokens just build up and up and up, as Brimaz players wish they were able to do. Alright, next on to what do we want in the deck. So, what does the commander want? The commander himself, Zurgo, wants mobilized cards. So we want to find the other mobilized cards that are in the actual Tarkir set, and make sure pretty much all of them make it here. We want anthems, cards that are going to up our creature's power so that it can survive combat. And then Zurgo gets to say, well, now you get to survive the sacrifice. Awesome. Temporary warrior clones. So if we can find ways to make like the red clones, which are usually just like sacrifice at the end step, if we make them copies of warriors, Zurgo says we get to keep them forever. Protection for our attackers. Our mobilized cards need to be able to attack endlessly, so we need to find some way to prevent combat damage to them or take them out of combat. That's very, very important for mobilize to keep on happening. And then just like time, whether it's like more combat effects, extra turns if that were some way to happen, just time to be able to get this army up. And also for us to not die on the crackback, because that tends to happen with Mardu a lot. We'll swing a lot, and we'll have no defenses left. So we need to find some way to keep us alive. And then, what does the deck itself want? In order to facilitate everything Zurgo wants, the deck itself wants impact tremors. So we have some extra ways to get around, you know, people having just impregnable boards. Token doublers. If we can find some way to get more tokens out of our mobilized triggers, that's great, because we need that in Commander. Evasion for the board. If we can find some way to get our attackers in and under or over our opponents, we'll actually get to, well, beat them with all of our tokens. Combat triggers. If there's some way that, hey, we attack with tokens, we make tokens. Now for every token we have, get plus blah, blah, blah. That's the sort of stuff that we want. We want combat trigger anthems would be great, instead of anthems that only trigger like on main phase and not anytime else. Red cloners, we're going to find a bunch of those. And then warriors. Warrior type of things. Let's get some warrior-centric cards in here, because we're going to have so many of them. We're going to find something that's incredibly valuable there. And then now on to the actual deck building parts. So, Zurgo, 5th of his name, because there have been so many Zurgos. Let's break down the exact cards that we have in the deck here. So, with Zurgo's Thunder's Decree, the anthem cards that we wanted to find, right? All-out assault. Creatures we control get +1/+1 and have death touch. A really good anthem that also does double duty by being, you know, some form of evasion for our tokens, because maybe our opponents don't want to block that. But we did an additional combat phase, which feeds into everything Mobilize wants to do. Enduring Courage, giving cards that come into play this turn haste and +2/0. So the Mobilize tokens we make get +2/0 while they're tapped and attacking. Hero of Oxford Ridge just says that creatures with power 1 or less can't block. So if our opponents are doing tokens, our opponents are no longer able to block us. Martin's Stronghold, this is the red version of Craterhoof. I didn't know about this card until chat told it to me, so thank you very much, chat. Hello, YouTube. But yeah, this is the red version of Craterhoof Behemoth. It doesn't give us trample, but it does give us the ability to say, hey, you can either block and lose all of your creatures now, so you can lose the game next turn, or you don't block and you lose the game now, whichever one. And then Nareev, Heart of the Storm. Of course, we want to have our legendary Mardu Spirit Dragon leading the charge. Creatures that enter the battlefield this turn deal twice that damage. So mobilize tokens or any clones that we made with our red cloners, those are going to come into play and they get to do double damage this turn. So if we take extra combats, more and more damage is going to happen. Next, we have our attack trigger doublers. Ishin, 2 heavens as 1. Mobilize is an attack trigger, so we get to do double mobilize. Same with Windcrag Siege. It's from the actual Tarkir set. They knew what they were doing. They said, hey, you have a mobilize trigger, how about you do that twice? Absolutely amazing. A board wipe that we have, Ruinous Ultimatum. The game is not super big on board wipes because we're trying to build an army, so that makes sense. But Ruinous Ultimatum is a one-sided one, and it has Nareev on it. Like, it's Tarkir art, so of course we're gonna have that. Oh, and lastly, I do want to mention the big red button. I am someone who believes that there should always be at least 1 or 2 infinites in your deck, just in case your initial strategy didn't work, or someone else's deck is just kind of preventing you from doing the thing. Having infinite combats with Combat Celebrant, you know, you choose whenever you want to actually activate the whole infinite combat part, but being able to, hey, someone gain infinite life, that's totally fine. I'm going to keep on attacking over and over and over again, and eventually the warrior hordes will be too much for your opponents and eventually they'll lose. But you still have to have a decent board set up in order to win. You can't just have one Combat Celebrant and then swing out infinitely and win. If your opponents have any blockers or enough blockers and that you don't have a big enough army ready to go, you'll still lose. Even if you have like infinite combats with Combat Celebrant. So Combat Celebrant allows you to kind of get to a certain point and then finish the game where other decks might just kind of like hose you down too much. So Combat Celebrant is our big red button break in case of we need an infinite because someone else gained infinite life. But you don't have to rely on it too much. It also is a warrior, so we're still staying on theme. Direct damage is going to be a super big win condition for us because as much as we want to just attack with endless Mardu hordes, Mishra, even though it has nothing to do with the Mardu, and there's other Mardu centric cards, but like Mishra and Within Range both say, hey, for every attacking creature you have, each of your opponents just loses that much life, and you might even gain some of that life too. So that keeps us alive and allows us to kill everyone at once, even if we're not even attacking them, which is great. For draw power, we have Skull Clamp, Raider Spoils. It's also an anthem that says if I hit you, I get to draw cards, which is great. Mindblade Render, another warriors deal damage, draw cards, and then Caretaker's Talent. This ends up being a draw cards every time we're making tokens, you know, once a turn, make a clone of a creature you control, and eventually turns into an anthem all by itself. So Caretaker's Talent, absolutely amazing. In terms of evasion for attackers, Elspeth Stormslayer does like quadruple duty here. I mean, just look at the card. She does every single thing that we want and then some, but especially being the evasion for attackers, it's the +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain flying until next turn. So all of your mobilized cards will get a +1/+1 counter, so they get to live longer through combat anyway, and they have flying, so they get to swing with impunity, make a bunch of tokens, and now your opponents have to choose, dang, what do I block here? And then Starry-Eyed Skyrider, also from the Tarkir set itself, you can swing with her, give another mobilized card flying, and all of the tokens that you have will have flying. And then Winds of Abandon, another one-sided board wipe, ends up being, hey, basically evasion for attackers. That fits that theme. Impact Tremors, of course, goes in the deck. It's also from the Tarkir set, so, you know, pretty fitting there. And then War Leader's Call, an anthem, as well as an Impact Tremors on top. We don't want to go super hard on Impact Tremors because kind of every token deck does that, but we do want to have some of the basics in here, right? It's only 2 mana and then 3 mana. You have your Mana Rock collection. These are all going to be perfectly kind of fine for what you're doing. You could have the Mana Rock that anthems for red creatures and then taps for red because all of your warriors are going to be red, but you know, that's just like some additional things that you can do here. But really, the artifact package is just going to be 4 mana rocks. Getting into the actual mobilizers here, we pretty much put in every single one that's in the actual set, save for like 1 4 mana 3/3 flyer that mobilizes for 1. That was just kind of like too much mana for too little gain. But like Bone Cairn Butcher, mobilize 2, and attacking tokens you have Death Touch, kind of a form of evasion. Mobilize 3, absolutely fantastic. Infantry Shield is actually the best mobilize I think that you can really have on a consistent basis. Just put it on a big thick creature and then you're just gonna boom, mobilize for X. Reigning Victor end up doing some pretty double duty by saying that an attacking creature, say with mobilize, gets indestructible, so they get to swing for free, and this card has mobilize itself, and it's a warrior, so if we end up making clones of it, that clone gets to stay around, give something else with mobilize indestructible, and mobilize itself. Shock Brigade, 2 mana mobilize, 1 mana mobilize, 4 mana mobilize that says whenever your tokens do eventually die, hey, pain and drain everyone. Voice of Victory gives you protection on your own turn, so no one's doing combat tricks, and you're able to mobilize too. Like, this one's absolutely fantastic. And then Zurgo's Vanguard hits for a bunch and mobilizes. And then of course Zurgo from the actual commander deck. Mobilize, and if your tokens do get blocked and they do die, you get to draw cards. If they do eventually die for whatever reason, your opponents will lose a bunch of life anyway. Really, really good catch 42 for your opponents. And then also in the mobilize category, we do have cards that just don't say mobilize on it, but end up doing like, hey, if you did mobilize at one point this turn, you get to do it again. So War Effort, Anthem also basically has mobilize on it. And then Renewed Solidarity, which I think is one of the spicier cards that we thought of while we were creating this. Thank you very much, chat. But Renewed Solidarity, when this enchantment enters, choose a creature type. It's going to be warrior. Creatures you control have anthems. Awesome. But at the beginning of your end step, for each token you control of the chosen type that entered this turn, create a token that is a copy of it. So all of your mobilize triggers, you swing, you get a bunch of mobilize, they survive combat, awesome. And then end step, before you even sacrifice them, or if you just don't sacrifice them with Zurgo, that's fine. Renewed Solidarity says, wow, you made a bunch of warriors, let me make you a copy of those as well. So Renewed Solidarity, brand new card from the Aether Drift Zombie Precon, so be sure to catch it from there. In terms of protection for attackers, we kind of only have 2 here. Iroas, God of Victory, is really, really good. He'll be a creature eventually. Also, your creatures have menace as well as preventing combat damage to them, so it makes it a lot harder for your opponents to block these endless token hordes. And then of course, Reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is going to be the best one here. It's going to do a lot of value for us. Pay 0 to remove target attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. Reconnaissance is going to be a part of a lot of combos that we have in the deck, but really being able to say, like, I'm going to swing with all these mobilize cards, right? And then I'm going to take them out of combat so you can't block them. And you can take the tokens out of combat too, so they live throughout the entire combat phase, and Zurgo will keep them alive at the end phase. Really, really good. Reconnaissance is incredibly important for this deck. And then one really spicy reanimate card that I wanted to mention here, Angel of Indemnity. Chat was really, really heavy on this one. ETB, bring a mana value 4 or less card back from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is going to be a lot of cards, by the way. A lot of our cards are going to be mana value 4 or less. But the fact that it has Encore, and we don't have to sacrifice those warrior tokens, because it's an angel warrior, at the end phase due to our commander. So we get to keep those 3 tokens that get made from Encore out while we resurrected, you know, like 3 cards from our battlefield. Really, really strong here. And Lifelink is always great. And now we get to, honestly, like the second portion of the entire deck, the red clones that we have. A lot of the red clones are, you know, pay mana, tap, whatever, create a token copy of something that you control, either in the battlefield, graveyard, etc., and then it gets sacrificed at the next end step. But if we are cloning warriors, they don't get sacrificed. Jaxis is a really, really good one here. Her blitz cost is 1 in a red, so she gets to come out with haste, awesome, and then she gets to activate her ability as soon as possible. And whenever she dies, we'll draw a card from her. But because she's a warrior, Zurgo will say, you don't get sacrificed at the end step. Awesome, we get to keep Jaxis for only the 2 costs. But if she does ever end up dying later in the game, she'll still allow us to draw a card. And she'll give that same ability to any other card that she makes a copy of. So if she makes a copy of one of our mobilized cards. If it's a warrior, Zergo says you don't get sacrificed, but eventually it will die, because your opponents have to get rid of us somehow. We're still going to draw a card from that, and Jaxus gets to keep on doing that over and over. A Kiki Jiki, of course, is just going to be a big win con for us. We make red clones of the things that we like, and if they're warriors, they get to stick around. Same with Ortheon. He ends up being a 9-drop. Hey, just win the game, because we're going to make 9 copies of one thing on our board. We're going to win if we do that. And then, of course, Jolly Balloon Man, one of the newer versions of kind of like Kiki Jiki, make a clone of something. Yes, it's a 1/1, but it has flying now, because it's a balloon, and now it doesn't get sacrificed. So any of these cards that you've seen throughout the entire game, give it mobilize, doesn't really matter that it's a 1/1, it doesn't get sacrificed, it has flying now, so it can keep on going and going and going, and it has haste, so it's going to do it immediately. And then the more like eclectic red clones we have, Mardu Siegebreaker, of course, is really good. Enter the battlefield, exile another card that you control, you get token copies of it, and those token copies don't have to go away at all, because if they're warriors, they don't get sacrificed because of your commander, and you get to keep on doing this. If you make a clone of Mardu Siegebreaker from any of these red cloners that we've been talking about, you get to do just a lot. You get to do a lot of wacky stuff with your board. That's definitely going to make you win the game. And then Redoubled Stormsinger, this is from the Mardu Precon, incredibly good. Whenever this creature attacks, for each creature token you control that entered this turn, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that token. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice those tokens. So all of your mobilized triggers, all of your red clone triggers, do them, you get another copy of those tokens, and then you go to end step to sacrifice them, but your commander says, no, don't do that, especially if they're, well, only if they're warriors, and their mobilized tokens are always going to be warriors. So Redoubled Stormsinger, really good in this deck. It's clearly a Mardu-like card, right? And then lastly, for our red clones that are going to be pretty integral to our winning strategy, Sandstorm Crasher, 4-mana 3/4 Minotaur Berserker Wizard. Trample, you may exert this card as it attacks. If you do, create a tapped and attacking copy of a creature that you control, sacrifice the next end step. We're going to be able to do some pretty wacky things with this card. If we can untap him, say like with Reconnaissance, we get to kind of keep on going again and again and again if we get some additional combats. And then onto just like unique tech, that even though it's not specifically like a warrior with mobilize, ends up being really cool here, and you're not going to want to pass these up. Assault Intercessor is a warrior, so if we do make a clone of it, it's not going to get sacrificed, but it says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. I mean, that's like Shieldred tier, just already by its own, and then if you make a copy of it with all of these cards that we have making a copy, now every time an opponent's creature dies, they lose 4 life, which is really bad. Your opponents don't really survive that. And if you do it again, oh my god, they lose 6 life for every single creature. This is huge. And the fact that they're a warrior means that we can make a clone for a really low price, and it gets to stick around because of our commander. Mardu Woe Reaper. Whenever Mardu Woe Reaper or another warrior enters the battlefield under your control, you may exile target creature card from a graveyard. If you do, gain 1 life. This is just a 1-drop, so it ends up working immediately. But it's just one of these 1-drop cards that ends up exiling your opponent's graveyard without much cost to you. You can just play this card for 1-drop way at the beginning of the game and kind of never swing with it, but every time you mobilize, you're like, hey, I think that you might be doing something with that card in the future, or not. It doesn't really matter, but you get rid of it, so you don't have to think that there might be some reanimation later, and you gain a life, all for the low cost of 1 mana and you playing the rest of your game. Absolutely fantastic. Ocelot Pride, expensive card, don't get me wrong, but its ability to just kind of like take your deck to the next level, all at a 1-drop cost, and ascend just having like 10 permanents on the battlefield, is just kind of outrageous. You can read the card here. It's great. But if you don't have it, it's totally fine. But if you did manage to open it up, hey, you're gonna win a lot more games this way. Primaris Eliminator, another warrior card. If we make a copy of this card, it can either be a board wipe for your opponents, giving -2/-2. Hell, if you make 2 copies in 1 turn, -4/-4. That's basically evasion for your whole board because your opponents can't block anymore. They just -4/-4 to the board, or destroying target creatures. Rose Room Treasurer, another warrior, so again, make a copy of it, doesn't go away. But the Alliance ability, whenever another creature you control enters, this includes your mobilized creature tokens. Create a treasure token if this is the first or second time this ability has resolved. Otherwise, you may pay X, and if you do, Rose Room Treasurer deals X damage to any target. So every single turn, every single time you mobilize 1, mobilize 2, boom, you're going to get 2 more treasures that you can use this turn immediately. And you just do this again and again. If you make a clone, a Red Room Treasurer, every 1 mobilize gets you 2 treasures a turn. Amazing card, and it doesn't go away because it's a warrior. And then same with Space Marine Devastator. This is enter the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. We're in Mardu. We don't really destroy artifacts and enchantments that readily unless we kind of veer off into like Vandal Blast or like white removal in general. We get to keep on the warrior attacking token, etc. theme by using a Space Marine Devastator. It also has squad, so if we're going to do any more token doubling tactics, boom, we get to do that. And then lastly, warrior typal things. We actually didn't go super hard in the paint on warrior typal stuff, because even though some of them are really good, the other cards that we added, especially the red clones, just did a lot for us, right? But Bright Hearth Banneret just says all of our warrior spells cost 1 less. That's pretty good. And usually we would just have like an artifact that says, oh, choose a creature type when I enter, all of those creatures of that type cost 1 less. We can skip those instead because we have the chance of making copies of this 2-drop. Right? Even though the 2-drop could die forever, totally fair, but the fact that we could maybe make like 1, 2, 3, 4 more copies of it with all of the red cloners that we have means that our warriors just end up costing just their color pips. Gornog, the Red Reaper. Chat suggested this one like early, and this was like the first card that made me go, wow. Okay, this is actually pretty dope. 2 in a red, 2/3 Minotaur Warrior with haste. Cowards can't block warriors. Whenever 1 or more warriors you control attack a player, target creature that player controls becomes a coward. Attacking warriors you control get +X/+O, where X is the number of cowards your opponents control. We don't have to go like coward making typo for this. This one card is enough to say, hey, I now get to attack with my mobilized cards, especially if they're warriors, or if we can make them warriors in some way, shape, or form, like for free with impunity. So now we can just keep on swinging. We don't have to worry about getting blocked, and we don't even get to have to worry about our warriors being blocked during combat because, well, our opponent's whole boards are now cowards. And then lastly, the Mindblade Render, which we talked about earlier, just warrior typal draw cards, which is pretty on theme. And then we stuck around with 35 lands. You can definitely go up or down on that. We kept 9 mana rocks, so we're still kind of pretty good in the mana rock category. But that there is the 5th Zergo that they've ever made. Zergo, 5th of his name. Thank you very much, chat, for helping me discover a lot of these cards, because I had no idea, especially about the red Craterhoof Behemoth. That one's really, really huge, and I definitely think that Renewed Solidarity is like my favorite pick here for just being extra, extra spicy, and a brand new card that just came out last set. But yeah, you get to actually be pretty on point with the Mardu typal theme too, if you wanted to stick to that. I think Zergo Thunder's Decree might be maybe not like the pinnacle of Mardu abilities, but really, really close, and certainly goes in the 99 if you were going to do a Mardu typal deck. But yeah, that's Kuro Hitsuki. Chat, thank you very much for building this deck with me. This was pretty freaking awesome. If you are interested in this deck, we have the entire deck list down below in the descriptions. If you're looking to buy any of these cards, please go to coolstuffinc.com where you can use code CURVE for 5% off. Helps out the channel, and you get to choose all of these wonderful cards for your personal build of Zergo Thunder's Decree. And do tune in pretty much every day of the week on the Twitch channel, where we are either playing Magic the Gathering Commander or deck building decks very much like this one. Chat, this was the second deck that chat wanted to see us make, so we're going to go down the list that we voted on in our Discord. So be sure to tune in to all of that in the future. I think the next one we'll be going over is one of the brand new Tarkir dragons. But yes, be sure to follow on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, all of those wonderful places. and I will see you in the next one. Have a good night.